And we've made it to the end of the first day. Welcome back to the CreaTech stage at cogX Hybrid Festival 2021. cogX is a global leadership summit and festival of AI and transformational technology, addressing the big question, how do we get the next 10 years right? I'm Leila Siddiqui, Associate Director Diversity at the IPA and member of the Creative Industries Council Diversity Group, and I'm your MC this afternoon. CreaTech has had a stellar lineup of cutting-edge content from gaming, live performance, advertising, esports, visual arts, music, fashion, and much, much more. It is worth reinstating that CreaTech is unique in that it is the intersection of creative and technology industries where innovation in AI, VR, algorithms, specialized software, and others are transforming creative services, outputs, and processes. CreaTech at cogX 2021 is hosted by the Creative Industries Council and supported by associate partners Digital Catapult, Facebook, Moore Kingston Smith, and UKRI. Please join the conversation on social using hashtag CreaTechUK and hashtag cogX 2021. Find out more about CreaTech and the work of the Creative Industries Council at thecreativeindustries.co.uk. I'd also like to say that applications are now open for our annual showcase of the best innovations in UK CreaTech called Ones to Watch 2021. Find out more at onestowatch.thecreativeindustries.co.uk and apply now. The first in-depth study and research into CreaTech employment has also been released today by Tech Nation and the Creative Industries Council. The report sheds new light on sought-after skills in the CreaTech category, which is attracting record levels of venture capital investment. And so we have come to the last session of the day. This one is an extra special one titled Bridgerton, Innovating Beyond TV. We all know what a huge role platforms such as Netflix have played over the course of the pandemic. The Netflix series Bridgerton was the biggest ever debut for an original series on the streaming service with a global audience of 82 million in its first 2 weeks alone. This session will discuss what has led to this incredible success story and what might come next. Our stellar panel is moderated by Elizabeth Diaferia, Senior Advisor for CITIB, the Creative Industries Trade and Investment Board, working between government and industry to promote the creative industries. Elizabeth, a big welcome to you.
Thank you.
And we're so excited to hear what you have to say. Over to you.
Thank you so much. And it's so exciting to be here. And I must admit, sort of like Bridgerton seems like it was in the winter and we're now in boiling hot days, but equally very special and to support the creative industries with cogX today. So I would like to introduce our panel. We are joined today by Adrian Wootton. Adrian is the CEO of the British Film Commission and Film London. He sits on our CITIB board, along with Vallance, who is the CEO of RIBA, the Royal Institute of British Architects. And finally joining our panel is Rich Waterworth, who is the CEO of TikTok UK and Europe. Welcome everybody. Pleased to have you this afternoon. It's certainly a sweltering day in London, the hottest day of the year. And I'm trying to wear a Regency dress, but sort of like with a square neckline, but you can all get away without having to wear, I didn't ask you to wear Regency costumes. So I'd like to welcome you. And one of the things that actually I was just was looking at this afternoon is the technology that we saw. And one of the opening lines of Bridgerton is, it is a truth universally acknowledged. And I just thought today it's a truth universally acknowledged that technology at cogX in 2020 is certainly just as good as it was in the 1820s. But to start off with, I'm going to go over to Adrian and we're going to hear about actually how did Bridgerton get to become filmed and how in the UK and what's the story. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Well, it's a pleasure to be here at cogX, CreaTech, and talking about Bridgerton, which is a fantastic success story, a success story of collaboration between the US and high-end television and production companies and all the fantastic talent and infrastructure and locations of the UK. And I'm delighted that the British Film Commission had an instrumental role in bringing these things together. I mean, as part of our work, the BFC promotes the UK, promotes its talent, its infrastructure, and creates new partnerships. And we have a long-running relationship with the streamers that are working here, like Netflix. But we're also constantly reaching out to the production companies that are commissioned by, amongst others, like Netflix. And we were very lucky about Bridgerton, because what happened was that we arranged regularly in non-pandemic times face-to-face familiarization visits, where we bring executives from production companies in the US who might not have made things here before and introduce them to the people, the talent, the facilities of the UK. And back in 2013, we did that with a then executive at ABC Television, Sarah Fisher. Sarah moved on, but as a result of the trip that she made to the UK, she became a real acolyte for the BFC, for the UK. And when we met her periodically, she kept on saying that she wanted to bring a production back to the UK. She then moved on and was headhunted and hired as the head of production for none other than Shonda Rhimes at Shondaland. And Shonda Rhimes is an innovative, dynamic, creative talent. And she wanted to do something different. She wanted to shake up the period drama, shake up the content of the period drama. And she did that and wanted to do that with Bridgerton, which started to be developed. And I essentially was on a trip to Los Angeles and had a phone call from Sarah Fisher inviting me to go to the Shondaland HQ in LA, which I did. And she immediately then started telling me and my colleagues about this new project. And then she said, can I introduce you to the writer of this series? And so I was then very lucky enough, this is back in early 2018, to meet the show's creator, Chris Van Dusen, who was actually holding material that he was writing and bombarding us with kind of questions and saying, I need to make a trip. I need to look at these Georgian locations. You need to sort out this for me and that for me. And we basically said, fantastic. Okay, we'll put together an itinerary for you. And whilst we did that, simultaneously, we reached back to Netflix in the UK and started helping them with studio space and locations. And so this dual relationship with Sarah and the team who were being commissioned by Netflix and Netflix itself on the infrastructure came together with us as the glue, I guess, in between. And Bridgerton determined that it was going to shoot in the UK. We helped them find studio space. We worked with them in terms of all the facilities. We provided the research materials for Chris. Chris made visits over to the UK. And the series was greenlit by Netflix. And frankly, the rest is history. Although, of course, we carried on working with Netflix and Shondaland as the series is shot, liaising with our national and regional partners on locations and infrastructure. We help with the planning permissions on the studio space in Uxbridge, and we maintain a very close working relationship on Bridgerton, which is obviously an incredibly innovative show in terms of content as well as technology, and resonates with the vision of Shonda Rhimes. And I'm just really delighted that we had such an advocate in Sarah Fisher, such a friend, to work with us to help her realize that vision in the UK.
That's an incredible story, because I don't think many people actually in the UK know that without you doing that, and actually maybe you should be sort of like a Lord Wootton, because quite frankly, you know, that is amazing. We wouldn't have had it otherwise. So that's a massive thank you. I must admit, I'm still really looking forward to watching the second series, the third series, the fourth series, the 9 books, you name it.
Well,
we're on.
Series 2 is underway. We're helping it right now. It's very exciting.
So it's brilliant. And I'd like to move over to Alan. And obviously, innovation is one of the things that we're talking about at CreaTech, and certainly technology and CreaTech, and where creativity meets technology. But there's an awful lot from the architecture, and certainly from the amazing houses, I think it's 40 locations that we used across the UK. And tell me, I know that you've been a fan watching Bridgerton. What thoughts do you have?
Yeah. Well, thanks very much, Elizabeth, and hi to everybody. Great to be here. So, the Georgian period was a period of incredible innovation, just like today. And that whole period was about new ideas, new products, new services, new ways of doing things. So not just building, but infrastructure. So things like transport. So, it might sound a bit trite, but the stagecoach itself developed from traveling at something like an average speed of 5 miles an hour in the 18th century to 10 miles an hour by the 1820s, the sort of time of Bridgerton. Twice the speed, twice the distance. So the English middle class could travel. They opened turnpike roads, toll roads of the day. People discovered tourism in the UK. And that's because they were actually denied travel because of the Napoleonic War. So it's sort of interesting that we're kind of in that place at the minute with the pandemic, aren't we? Sort of considering domestic tourism again. canals were built, building product could be, building materials could be delivered from further away than ever before. So buildings had new components in them from different places. There were things like the development of gas lighting that came along, and if you remember that wonderful scene in the show where the Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens are lit up, and to Daphne's great delight, that gaslight technology was just a few years old at the time.
I think that's how they fell in, in that sort of fall in love, or supposedly in that episode where they did, the roofs, they're amazing.
Another thing, steam printing is really fascinating. Development of steam printing technology, which meant that more newspapers, more scandal sheets, Lady Whistledown, more novels, and some of that time of romanticism. And I was just going to mention actually the Mary Shelley novel Frankenstein, because it's a very famous book, but it was actually essentially about people's fascination and fear of science and technology at the time. Yeah. So kind of in a way, that's a sort of backhanded compliment to the development of the wonderful things that were going on. And then in buildings themselves, people had more money to spend on luxuries like architectural design, and you saw the rise of the Georgian terraces, detached villas that sprung up, which remain so popular today. So features such as long curved terraces, which were all new at the time. And the houses themselves very much about symmetry, about clean lines, natural light, lots of development in terms of... Sorry?
They're very beautiful. You just look at the crescents and the sort of you're right, the symmetry and the beautiful.
Yeah, so they made fantastic developments, and there were big strides in interior design as well. So the rooms became very well proportioned. They had lots of natural light. New ideas such as, the old formality of furniture arrangement. So before that time, furniture was arranged around the edge of a room, and the servants of the day would bring the furniture into the middle. But at that time, they had elegant furniture. It was the development of things like wallpaper designs, fantastic striped wallpaper. The sofas and armchairs became more comfortable. They were grouped around the fireplace, much as you see them today. So that innovation led to a lot of things that are very, very clearly recognisable in today's homes and designs as well. And then the locations themselves, as you say, it's about 40 locations, many of which are actually in the RIBA's wonderful collection. So we've got lots of sketches and drawings of the original designs, but there were a mixture of different kinds of buildings. But things like the Royal Crescent in Bath, which is the Featherington House, and that was the first crescent of terraced houses to be built in England. So another great development. Queen's House in Greenwich, which is the scene of, a couple of scenes, but most notably where the Duke of Hastings gave Lord Burrbrook a bit of a boxing lesson. But that was designed by Inigo Jones. It was the first classical building in England. And then continuing the boxing link, that wonderful number 3 covered slip, which is at the historic dockyard in Chatham, was used for the prize fighting match scene. And when that was built in, I think it was about 1838, it was the largest wide-span timber structure in Europe, which had this incredible cantilever roof. So Elizabeth, to sum up, Bridgerton, great show set against the backdrop of great British architecture and buildings at a time when technology was just as innovative as it is today.
It's incredible. And you think now that certainly since maybe not just the pandemic, but the people that are thinking of moving out of London, or certainly, that we don't need to be somewhere. There's like 40 different locations around the country that you can go to move to with all these amazing Georgian, probably stately homes. But hey, and I think also the interest in Georgian architecture, and that people are, I think there was something in the Sunday Times back in January when the series came out about the estate agents and properties going through the roof because they're Georgian. And and it still's the same. They are so beautiful. We all aspire to want to live in a beautiful Georgian house with wisteria coming out the front and these incredible colours. So it's sort of what was innovative then is what we're all still aspiring for. So and as you say, the printing press that they started the society papers, and it really did happen. And I've seen an Instagram post this afternoon from Mr. Van Dusen, who is actually got the next series of it, sort of like it's in filming, but also what I did note was that the Lady Whistledown papers are still on the next series, so whatever goes from there. So exciting. And Rich, last but not least, because TikTok, oh my goodness, has become in the pandemic and in lockdown and everything, the growth that you've had has just been incredible. But also for me, just seeing how it developed from the Bridgerton challenges, from the Bridgerton names, from the Bridgerton the musical, oh my goodness, is just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I know certainly my daughter and I, we were tuning in every night when there was a new song being made, and they really are absolutely spectacular. And Emily Bear and Abigail Barlow have just gone second to none. I mean, they've got, I think, over 2 million followers themselves, and Bridgerton the musical is 183 million views, 8 billion views on Bridgerton alone. I'm probably taking all the stats that you were just going to tell me, so I'm going to hand it to you.
No, well, that's great. You're absolutely right. You've got all the stats absolutely right. And I mean, thanks very much for having me. And I tell you, I could listen to Alan, with those architectural facts and context all evening. Absolutely fascinating.
We're all going on a tour with Alan.
In the much shorter history of TikTok, there's no doubt that the Bridgerton has done something that very few other TV shows for sure have done. I mean, definitely it's very common for TV shows to be part of the creative conversation on TikTok. That's something that the TikTok users love to play with and explore the characters and themes. But Bridgerton really took that to the next level. As you said, these two creators, Abigail and Emily, who wrote 2 songs, put them on TikTok, and had an absolutely extraordinary overnight reaction. Yeah. And I think it came just a couple of months after another musical was written on TikTok called the Ratatouille the musical. Some people may have seen. Exactly. That was exactly the live show of that ended up playing on New Year's Eve. And that had been put together over the previous few months. So I think Emily and Lucy kind of really recognized they were onto something, and they very quickly started writing more songs, as you say, and it really spiraled, as you say. I mean, just to put that into context, I mean, 8 billion views on Bridgerton for one single TV show property is in the world of big numbers on TikTok, that is an extraordinarily big number. And so it really I think speaks to the fact that those two creators, but then all of the different memes, and whether it's the music elements, the soundtrack, whether it's the challenges that people were setting each other to perform everyday modern tasks as if they were in Bridgerton. So people were going to shops and talking in Regency language. You had surgeons and doctors putting their scrubs on, their robes on, and gloves as if they were in Bridgerton. I mean, you had there were so many different kind of variations on those themes. So it was just amazing to see.
Absolutely phenomenal. And I think also what's so funny is that you just think about it, and just even the word Regency got 55 million. Where does that go? I mean, no one's using Regency nowadays. So, and I remember seeing somebody who'd actually bought a title in Scotland. Apparently you can buy a title in Scotland for, I don't know how very much, I don't think it's that expensive. And I think my daughter thought she was going to buy me one for my birthday, that you could be Lady so-and-so of some manor up in Scotland. So just phenomenal, really, where it went. And thank you for that. That is just so exciting. I mean, we've been in touch with Emily and Abigail, and we're massive followers of them, and we're certainly keen if it comes to the UK or what happens next. But equally, Bridgerton the musical, I think watch out, Andrew Lloyd Webber. There's some new creators down the road. So
well, he'll probably be duetting with them before you know it. He's prolific on TikTok. He's
amazing on TikTok, actually.
And duets with regular users, with other singers. He's absolutely fantastic. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a collaboration there.
Sounds good. So I'm going to go back to Bridgerton, and certainly a few of the things that we thought and sort of like what was so fresh, what was so new. And this is just generally to open to you all that, I mean, certainly some of the things I picked up on was the music. I mean, suddenly you're listening to Ariana Grande, being played by a string quartet, Vitamins string quartet from Los Angeles, and it just is utterly beautiful. And, and just sort of like that songs that you weren't expecting that just came out, that were just sort of like, oh, hold on a minute, that's familiar. I mean, it's just the way it was done was very fresh, was very new. And I just think that, you look at everything from the fashion, and as I said, I've got a square neckline on, but just even, corsets, the demand and the sort of like Google searches for corset went up like 1,000% in January. And it's
I'll throw a couple more statistics at you, but you talk about those music, the music track. So there was one track called Duomo, which was a classical reworking of a Taylor Swift track, and that track alone had over 60,000 TikTok creations made just with that one track, and people were often doing it to Bridgerton trends, but other things. And then the corset. I mean, we mentioned 8 billion views for Bridgerton related videos. Corset as a hashtag alone had over 2 billion. So I mean, that challenge was particularly popular.
Wow.
That's what's really interesting, though, isn't it? The way in which it's almost like, okay, let's take what Hamilton did on stage, and let's inject that into the kind of soundtrack of Bridgerton. Let's do blind casting, which is also from it come from theatre, but it's very much Shondaland and what she wanted to do in terms of with Chris as that parallel universe, and essentially all the things that are we are in a sense familiar with kind of Regency, but all the things that are buried in terms of Regency, in terms of or are only now starting to really be foregrounded. But Alan knows about all too well about Regency being founded on slavery and on exploitation of empire, and Shondaland turns this all on its head by the way in which it foregrounds black characters as aristocrats, and on top of that, it in terms of fashion. I know if Caroline was here from the Fashion Council, again, it's not. And my daughter actually works in costume on film and television, and she would tell you if she was here, saying again, what Shondaland does is it takes the kind of Regency model, but actually, though the fashion design is being drawn from ultra contemporary British fashion, melding with traditional historic Regency design. So there's a mashup going on, which is the kind of innovative, creative content.
Totally, because it's very different, isn't it, from Mr. Darcy and sort of like the Jane Austen. You think of those colours and they're quite drab. And it's sort of like, and you just think that sort of like, listen, I won't ever say that Colin Firth's drab, but it's just the fact that, it just felt sort of always grey. English sort of like period dramas are sort of like that grey, green, absolutely beautiful. But the vibrancy and the colour that we saw from Bridgerton is just sort of like, you almost need sunglasses. And it's sort of like, and a friend of mine thought that they had their TV set on the wrong settings or something. Well, that, they'd pressed the sort of, I said, no, it's really meant to be like that. It is so vibrant. And I think that's what's so exciting. And in certainly the pandemic, when we were all really feeling quite miserable at the beginning, end of last year and sort of going into our lockdown, that it was just like, this is exactly what we needed to sort of like shine out and feel positive about, what's going on out there. But no, the color, I mean, just even the costumes, I think there's something like, oh my goodness, I think over 1,000 people just working on dresses alone or something, I think was one of the stats. And there's 7,500 costumes, and it's just sort of like 100 people just on dresses. And it's just, it's just incredible. Goodness knows, but just so exciting.
Well, that's the other thing is that what we should say from a cogX, from a creator, is that this show coming is part of a kind of global demand of people wanting to make content here in the UK, wanting to access the talent, the infrastructure, the locations, the studio space. And what Bridgerton is doing is it's innovating in all the ways that we're talking about in terms of content, but it's also providing hundreds of jobs and billions of pounds back into the UK economy in the long term. That's part of the relationship with Shondaland. That's part of the relationship with Netflix. This is really good business for recovery and growth for the UK.
No, it really is. And I think actually, I did hear, I'm sure we all heard that the Chancellor, that Rishi Sunak is a fan of Bridgerton. And I think we're going to have to get him on a session at some stage to talk about it. But you're quite right that the jobs that it's creating, the sort of like the work that we're doing. And one of the things that we do from the Creative Industries Trade and Investment Board is that we are promoting exports, creative industries exports around the world and inward investment. And it couldn't be a better story to collaborate, because we've talked about, we have fashion on the board, we have architecture, we have film. I think we need TikTok on the board as well, Rich. So I sort of like, so we've got to look on what's going on with the social media as well. So I think that's very key. But, it is really appropriate that sort of like what we're looking at with our new Global Britain agenda, that we need to go out and sell the world of what we're doing. So,
and And also in terms of the stuff about the levelling up agenda, the great thing is Bridgerton is shot in a studio in London, but it's being shot in Bath, it's being shot in Yorkshire. It's not only providing employment for London and the southeast, but it's actually all this high-end television is radiating across the UK, and we have now 7 different clusters around the UK of film and television driven by shows like Bridgerton, which are using the fantastic infrastructure and talent of all the nations in the region.
And also how production has come back with, obviously, from the pandemic, with the virtual production as well that's been going on. And I know that you were instrumental in setting up the COVID safety instructions on, you know, how people got back to filming before other industries got back. So
yeah, well, we're in a position, as people know, that the fact is that throughout the lockdown since June last year, we've been shooting, and we've got more production going on in the UK, pretty much more than anywhere else in the world at the moment in terms of film, and especially high-end television. And the demand curve is actually bigger than it was before we started the pandemic in March last year. So we're in a very good place in terms of film and television production in the UK because of that creative collaboration with, you know, international companies who want to access the fiscal subsidies, the talent, the infrastructure, all of that.
No, it's fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to go over and sort of like think a few of the other things that you got from it. I mean, what did anybody guess who Lady Bridgerton was? No, Lady Whistledown.
Lady Whistledown. I guessed who Lady Bridgerton was right from the beginning.
I knew she was Julie Andrews, but no.
Who was she? The Lady Whistledown. Who was Lady? Did you get it right? Alan, did you get it right?
Eventually, but we had to take a few goes, my wife and I. We were speculating throughout, I have to say, definitely.
Yeah. No, Rich is shaking his head. He's no.
Well, I came to Bridgerton, you know, through sort of secondhand, through hearing all the people talking about it. So I think I actually found out by someone telling me, and they had a massive spoiler, which was a bit of a shame. But most of the people I know who were watching it were very clear they had not guessed.
It was very well done, actually, and it was in the BAFTAs last week as one of the sort of like the nominations for the must-watch moments of sort of like of TV, up with Nigella's Microwave. So it's sort of like, you know, it didn't win, but it was up there. And I think that, you know, for me, I'm just wondering, will it be the same? Because I haven't read any of them, so I haven't read any. And you know, the next one, as we know, season 2 is going to be without the Duke, who is going to be a big disappointment for many people, myself included. But
not heading into spoiler alert territory, are we now?
But it's sort of like, will our Lady Whistledown be the same person, or will it be like Gossip Girl, where it rotates and it's somebody else?
Well, I hope it's, you know, because if somebody asked me my favorite character, because I'm a great fan of Julie Andrews, I hope, you know.
Yes.
I hope it's her.
Oh yeah. Even if the character's different.
We love Julie Andrews, and it was one of those things. There were a few moments where I thought that it was actually Nicola Coughlan, that it was Penelope, but sort of like, and then I moved off. You know, it got you in, and then it moved you back, and it's just sort of, I think that, you know, my first viewing of Bridgerton, I did 5 episodes and then 3 the next night, and I probably would have stayed up the whole night actually. And I have watched it twice, and I after just watching a little bit this afternoon to refresh, I think I'll be in on that one again before too long, I'm sure. Because every time you watch it, there's something different that you see in it that I think that, you know, what is so interesting is the amount of different characters. But I think also, as you mentioned about the blind casting, it's so exciting to see such a diverse cast, such a talented cast, but also such a fresh new cast. And, you know, and there's a number of new people that are coming on, new characters. And, you know, and whilst we might be initially disappointed that, you know, the Duke won't be in it, I'm sure there's still going to be an awful lot of worthwhile watching that we'll look forward to for the next one. And I think also one of the other points that I've really found, which is incredible from it, is just sort of like there's been a rise of something like 900% of people reading romantic fiction again, and, you know, which would normally be embarrassed to admit that you wouldn't read it. And it's sort of like, so that certainly got some of the content and publishing and writing going. But I think also things like crafts, things like playing the piano, things like doing needlework, sort of like, I don't think they were knitting, but sort of like sewing and the piano, and just a massive increase in the craft sector. It's just, which was very helpful in lockdown.
And I think this, I mean, you were saying earlier all the different, numbers of different sort of specialisms and production teams working on that. But I think that's a big part of the story here, isn't it? Is the richness of the whole world, which and I think it is. I don't know if it's because of lockdown or because of Bridgerton or some combination, but the fact that so many of those kind of creative pursuits have been taken up by people or imitated by people or elaborated on is really interesting. There's something going on there.
Oh, completely. No, I think so, and I think that there's something for everyone, surely, isn't it? I mean, and it's not just listen. I'm here with 3 men watching it that have watched it, that have discussed it. So it's not just for the ladies. Let's be honest. They're sort of like, and I just when you think about the Queen and just the relationships that sort of like between King George and the sort of like and what was going on there, that there's sort of like different elements of history that this was far more interesting than any of my history lessons at school. I've learned more about the Georgians from Alan this afternoon, from the than I did about in any school lessons. So I mean, quite frankly, Alan, we need you out there. This is you're going to be teaching the world about the Georgians on what they did.
Well, I'm no expert, but I'm a generalist. But yeah, there's some great history. It's all about understanding what happened and applying it for the future. That innovation things are really telling, because innovation's about ideas. So the process of design is a process of coming up with solutions to problems, and the Georgians had great design principles, and people like architecture design generally nowadays it's based on problem solving. So all of that stuff is just as relevant now.
No, absolutely.
I think it came at a perfect time because I have to say I don't think I'm not a critic of Downton or I love Downton. I love The Crown. I think that they have an absolute place. But the thing about this is that it's different. Creating that parallel universe, doing that different, it created a perfect separate space for itself, which may appeal to some of the same audiences, but also appeals to an audience that wouldn't necessarily want to watch The Crown in the same way, and definitely is appealing to a young demographic.
I think, Adrian, it was a kind of an unfaithful recreation, and in doing that, it created something wonderfully new.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think you're absolutely right, Alan. I think in terms of mixing that, and bringing those elements to it. So because The Crown is there, or you can see brilliant traditional.
I also think that in taking so much creative license themselves, and adding so many interesting contemporary, whether it's music or other things, to what was going on, it really it gives the audience, license to kind of play with the themes and the content of the show, and I think that that is a really, really interesting trend of where you create something which is a work in itself, but actually it's also the springboard for other people to go off and respond to it, react to it, take it, make it their own. And certainly we see that on TikTok. That is, I think, the fundamental difference between the shows that the community takes on and really plays with and has fun with, and the shows that they just watch but they don't actually participate with in that way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Listen, I've just got a little note that we're running towards the end. I could go on all evening about it, and I think we're definitely going to have another round on this one. But I'm going to ask you all, okay, so one of the Bridgerton challenges is your Bridgerton name. So it is your middle name followed by, oh, hang on a minute. So your Lord or Lady, right, we'll get that bit right first of all. I knew there was something missing. Lord or Lady, your middle name followed by what you last drank. Add ton, T-O-N to that. And then the next part is the first word of your address, not the number, the first word of your address where you live, and then add shire to it, okay? So we've got Lord or Lady, your middle name, your what you last drank. You're going to add then the road or the where you live or whatever it is, the first word of where you live, and then shire to it. And so, okay, who's going to go first, or do you want me to?
You go first.
You go. I didn't realise there was going to be an exam at the end of this.
I know, exactly right. So, because I knew it already, I'm going to be. It's Lady Georgia Waterton of Eatonshire.
Okay. Well,
you always had your name there, Rich. Okay, so yeah.
Yeah.
We might all be connected here. We might all be family.
Yeah. Well, also, I'll do mine now because so mine we sound connected even more so now. So mine is Lord Bailey Waterton of Grangemeshire.
I love it. We're related. I love it.
We're all quite unrelated then, because mine is Lord Oliver Teton of Chilternshire.
I was almost.
Right. And well, Adrian's the only one that's not related, because I would be Lord Keith Waterton of Highfieldshire. If you asked us in wintertime, we'd be completely unrelated.
Fantastic. Of course, it's early evening, but we haven't started on the alcohol. It could have been a very different answer.
Yeah, that's right.
So there we go. And I thank you so much for the most exciting and amazing panel. I'm not sure that cogX knows what's happened with creative industries and CreaTech. We're very different to the rest of the day. So I'd love to say thank you so much to Adrian, to Vallance, and to Rich. And we're going to sign out with actually showing you some TikToks. So we have Emily Bear and Abigail Barlow with Balancing the Scales, which is one of my favorite songs from TikTok Musical, and this is from Lady Violet Bridgerton. Actually, it's not Lady Violet doing it. It's Lady Violet's Balancing the Scales. Thank you so much.
Balancing the scales, all my job entails making sure that they're prepared to see the world, making sure they're fine on their own when they're old and they're grown, and all I see is shadows. But that doesn't make it easier to let them go. I walk past the doors and the corridors where they grew, and all I feel is emptiness from this emptying nest. Admit, are you there? I was unaware how difficult it'd be without you there.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Elizabeth, Alan, Rich, and Adrian. You've left us uplifted and positive, and that is a great note to end our first day on. In addition to everything that has been discussed, I just add that empowerment of people of color and women has really made Bridgerton feel accessible and resonated with an international audience. And in the same vein, we hope that you have enjoyed the diverse range of content at CreaTech today. We'll be back with lots more tomorrow from 9 a.m. Have a fantastic evening, and thank you so much for watching.